Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so welcome everybody. So here's the deal on recording. Afterwards, it will be by tomorrow, it will be put up on our OREB Facebook page as well as on YouTube. And we get a lot of people that after the fact watch it. And you're welcome to watch it. The first thing I want to do is make an announcement regarding being civil to each other. We encourage people to ask tough questions of our guests, but we do not allow harassment of candidates or attendees at the meeting. If you're engaged in a hostile behavior towards others in the meeting, we reserve the right to remove you, and that includes comments on chat. So let's not be that way. It's good to ask tough questions, but we need to remember to be civil on it. So, okay, this is going to be a crazy day. We've got, I think, 17 people we're going to hear from.
Carol, can I add one more thing? That we are recording it, and if you aren't a speaker, would you please mute yourself so that it doesn't interfere with our speakers?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to make a couple announcements. One is Sunday, September 11th. Our Revolution East Bay will have a booth at the Solano Stroll, and anybody who's endorsed by us is welcome to contact us and let us know they want to be part of the booth. The purpose is to have a space for people that we've endorsed to get exposure to a lot of people. And I imagine the only people that'll be interested are people that are like Berkeley, Albany, El Cerrito, Richmond. You know, I don't think people will come from Hayward because that's not who goes to this stroll, but I wanted to mention that will be happening. And the other thing is this coming Friday, it's not actually sponsored by Our Revolution East Bay, but several of our members have been involved in putting together a fundraiser called Happy Hour with Janani Ramachandran. It'll be at Vic's chat, and I'll stick that in the chat in a little bit once we get going. And everybody's welcome, and there'll be some really good Indian food and some great speakers. Alex Lee's coming up from San Jose. Amar Shirgil will be there, and we have local people. So anyway, okay, so now let's get to the important part and start talking about who these 17 people are that we got here today. So the way it's going to work is each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, say why they think they should be endorsed by us, you know, whatever they want to say really. And then they have 2 minutes on that. Then there will be 2 questions that can be asked, and they will be able to reply for 90 seconds maximum. And after they've answered the 2 questions, if there's anything they have to say, they've got 30 more seconds to say it. And we have to be really tight on the time, folks. We don't want to be here all night, and I know you don't either. And we're going to do the best we can to stick to this. Okay, so the first group of candidates we're going to hear from are 5 outstanding people that are running for the Berkeley Rent Board. And so I'll actually be introducing each one of them. And I believe Michael will be timing people. So the first person that we're going to interview is Soli Alpert. Soli is, yay. Soli's an incumbent. This will be his second term. He's vice chair of the Rent Board here in Berkeley. He's a legislative assistant to Rigel Robinson of the Berkeley City Council. He's a delegate at the California Democratic Party, et cetera, et cetera. He's really got his hands in a lot of things, and he's going to get a little more time. So his first minute or two, he's going to talk about the Rent Board, and then he will move into talking about why we should endorse him. Soli, welcome.
Thank you. And Carol, do you mind actually, if I'll take a couple minutes at the top just to describe the kind of slate process, and then a couple of the members of the slate need to leave a little early. So can I go after them for my personal?
Certainly.
Great. So hi folks, as Carol gave in that very flattering intro, I'm Soli Alpert, and wanted to tell you all just about what the rent board is in Berkeley and what the tenant convention is and how that process works. So in 1980 in Berkeley, we got an elected rent board. We're one of only two cities in the entire country that have an elected rent board, the other being down in Santa Monica. And the board's job is to oversee and implement the rent control and eviction for good cause ordinance, among a few other things. And in Berkeley, every year before the election, we have a tenant convention, the Berkeley Tenant Convention, which is essentially kind of like an unofficial primary or caucus where the progressive pro-tenant organizations and community members come together to nominate a pro-tenant slate of candidates. And so it's not the case that the five of us decided that we were going to be a slate together and decided to run. We went through the convention process, and then the convention, we succeeded, we were nominated at the convention, and that's how the slate comes to be. And so this year, the convention was nominated by, I think, a dozen different organizations, including the Berkeley Tenants Union, this organization, Our Revolution East Bay, the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club, East Bay DSA, YDSA, Young Democrats, the Democratic Socialists at Cal, the Green Party of Alameda County, the Healthy Back Families, Friends of Adeline, Center for Independent Living, the Gray Panthers, and a couple others as well. And the convention has been very successful in ensuring that landlords don't take over the rent board, because what we know is that when they do, it's not just like if moderates control the council and they maybe don't do things that we like or do things we don't like. If folks who, if landlord interests control the rent board, they fundamentally believe the agency should be destroyed. And so the rent board convention is a really important process to make sure that tenant votes don't get split and that we're unified in support of rent control and tenant protections. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about myself later, but for now I'll turn it over to, I know Negeene needs to leave early, and I think one other person on the slate maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's just Negeene.
Okay, I'll go ahead and introduce Negeene first. I'll be real brief because I know people have a lot to do. She's a member of the Berkeley Tenants Union Steering Committee. She's owner of a physical therapy business and a physical therapist. And she's one of the few people that I'm aware of anyhow that's run for the Berkeley Rent Board that's actually owns a house. And she's not a renter. Negeene, welcome.
Hi, Carol. Yes, I am actually a homeowner, but I'm also a renter. It's not totally correct because I rent the space that I'm currently have the clinic in. So let me tell you a bit about myself. Thank you for the intro and thank you for having me here. I own a clinic in downtown Berkeley that's been operating over 35 years. This clinic is devoted to the community. It's called Berkeley Community Physical Therapy. And we're the only clinic in town, physical therapy clinic, that takes Medi-Cal, Medicare, and most forms of insurance. Our private cash pay rate is the lowest in the Bay Area, and that's because we want to be accessible. And the model here, although I own it, is a cooperative kind of system where we all make about the same money, the same paycheck, and we are responsible for one-on-one patient care. That being said, I don't want to take a lot of time about my work, but that is what brings me to my community. Through the 12 years that I've worked at this clinic, I bought it from the old owner when she was retiring just before the pandemic. And I had a lot of trials and tribulations through the pandemic with my landlords, which are one of the biggest landlords in Berkeley. And I had to go through a lot, moving and back pay rent and all this stuff. So I'm very deeply embedded in tenants' rights issues due to those things that I've been experiencing. But most of all, I've experienced the condition of housing through my patients. Many of my clients have lived through eviction and wholesale displacement. Their agony and their stories have driven me to advocacy. Too few of them know their rights or the special protections that Berkeley provides through our just cause eviction, tenant protections, and rent control laws. I am committed to enforcing these laws and expanding rent control and maintaining as much rent control units as we can, because as I said, I see a lot of disabled people, seniors, And
2
aging
minutes.
in place is also very important to me. And I see that many of those people live in rent-controlled housing, and we need to make sure our seniors can age in place and live with dignity. Again, it's
2
very
minutes.
important what's going on at the state level as they are passing more and more legislation to make our communities less strong in our zoning and our own control over our cities. It's changing the shape of our cities. Gentrification is displacing so
Please
many
finish
brown
up.
and Black residents. So as I said, we must be vigilant, we must protect our tenants, and we need an equitable pro-tenant slate to represent us in the rent board. I'm a woman, a minority, a business owner, a homeowner, a tenant, a single mother, and a healthcare worker. And I know that mental and physical health begins with stable housing, because housing is a human right. Thank you.
Okay, we're open to questions now. Anybody see a hand up? Oh, okay, I guess there's no questions for you. Do you want to say anything else, like just to wrap up for maximum 30 seconds, Negeene?
Yes, I wanted to say that I've been working with the community after I got involved in Bernie's 2016 campaign and went to Philadelphia and heard him speak. And I came back home because he said, we got to get involved in politics at our community level, at the smallest level possible, and take it over. And I've been involved with Friends of Adeline to return Black and Brown residents that have been right of return as one of their points, and also for the housing around the BART. I'm a member of the Berkeley Citizens Action for many, many years, and an active member steering committee. And I'm in the Berkeley Tenants Steering Committee. As you mentioned, I'm responsible for bringing in a lot of new members to the steering committee, and so that we can have a more diverse representation at the tenants union.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Who was going to be the next person that needed to go quickly, sooner?
Did anyone else on the slate have a hard stop?
And it said.
It may have just been Nikki, so I think we may be good now. Thank you for accommodating that.
If people could close their mics.
Look in today's email about 11 a.m.
You have your sound off?
Oh, I hope so.
But yeah, I think if you want to go in the regular order for the rest of the folks, I think we're good.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do yours now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the preference.
Go for it.
Hi, as Carol said in her intro, I am the only incumbent running for the board and proud to be nominated by the tenant convention. I am a legislative assistant. I've worked first for Councilmember Harrison and then now for Councilmember Robinson, and a union organizer. In 2019, I and a colleague on the board or at the another one of the legislative aides at City Hall unionized the legislation to SEIU 10-1, and I'm now a steward and a member of COPE committee, which is the political body for 10-1 for Alameda County. And I wear a lot of hats. As Carol was saying, I've been on the board of this club for a while, and now I would serve as the secretary or the administrative coordinator for Wellstone Democratic Club. Also, by the way, your endorsement ballot for Wellstone is due tonight at midnight. If you have not yet filled that out, looking at you, Sherry. So yeah, keeping busy. I've been fighting at the board in my term to really shine a light on inaction by the city in addressing hazardous conditions for tenants in some properties, advocating for, not successfully, but hopefully we're going to try again on ballot measures that would expand eviction control to currently exempt units, and also help to draft recommendations to the council on how to make sure that upzoning wasn't causing gentrification and displacement, and that it was really being used to benefit the widest possible array of our community, not just the wealthiest. Folks who can afford wealthy or expensive housing and the developers who can build it. And that time, sorry.
Oh, okay. I think we have a question from Sherry.
Oh, sure. I wasn't sure if that was 2 minutes or not, but
it was about
quite here.
Actually, this is from Matthew in the chat, and he wanted you to discuss who the slate is actually running against.
I'm not Kabir. That's from Kabir, not me.
Oh, from Kabir. Okay, Kabir wanted to know who actually the slate is running against and a little bit more information about the election itself.
Sure. So there are 5 seats up this year. There are 8 candidates for the 5 seats, obviously the 5 of us on the slate, and then there are 3 other candidates. One candidate is Wendy, I can't remember her last name, Wendy Hood something, who was a candidate 2 years ago, and she's, I saw her multiple times in the clerk's office with the assistance of the main lobbyist for the landlords in Berkeley. She ran on the quote unquote homeowners for rent board slate 2 years ago, which was funded through hundreds of thousands of dollars in independent expenditures from the Realtors Association. They literally in 2020 spent more money in their independent expenditure than the entire rest of the field, including the candidates they were supporting directly combined. So that's one of the candidates running. Then there's another candidate, Carol Mosaec, who, I appreciate the work she's done as a commissioner for the city of Berkeley, but she went through the tenant. One of the things about the tenant convention is when you run, it's not like you're seeking the endorsement of a club. You are seeking nomination, and if you don't get the nomination, you're pledged to drop out and not run for the office. And so Carol in 2020 sought the nomination of the tenant convention and then didn't receive it and ran anyway. And she also, I appreciate the work she's done. I don't think she's quite as strongly committed to tenant protections as the slate. She, spoke recently in favor of not putting the measure on the ballot to expand eviction protections. And then the third candidate who's running is Stefan Elkstrand, who this is his 4th attempt to get on the board. In 2016, he went to the convention and went through the screening process, but withdrew before they voting at the convention. In 2018 and 2020, he went through the vote, and he was the runner-up for getting the nomination in 2018, and he was the 2nd or 3rd runner-up in 2020. And then this year, he didn't go through the convention. He decided to run without going through the convention process. And again, someone who I think who I appreciate the work that he's done. But the point of the convention is to really center, and unify tenants behind one set of folks so that we're all unified together. And really, I'll just share my opinion. Running for office is not about one person or one ego. It's about the community. And so I think you have to ask, why am I running? And even if you have good values and you do a good job, if you're not running with the support of the community, or if you're running in a way that's going to harm the community, you're not doing it for the community, you're doing it for yourself. And so I think the beauty of the tenant convention is in allowing us to be unified and together in a community. And so even if folks are running who I think, might do a decent job as a commissioner, I really have to question what the purpose is in running if they elected not even to go through the process where we get together as a community and make those choices and those commitments to each other.
Okay, we have time for one more question, a short question and a short answer, por favor. Is there another question for Soli or not?
I'll ask a question. Which candidates on and off of the slate are using public financing and which aren't?
That's a great question. So I believe that every candidate who is running has qualified for public financing except for Stefan, who didn't apply for it. And there was a hiccup on our slate, but we resolved it. So we're all doing public financing. I believe both Wendy and Carol are also doing public financing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. We're going to move to the next candidate. Let's see, who did we list next? Okay, our next person is Ida Martinec, who I've gone door to door with her. She's one of the strongest activists around. She's a union steward and she's an attorney. Ida.
Yay.
Welcome.
Yay.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, but you guys are making me very emotional. It's so good to see your faces. I miss you all so much. My peeps. I feel at home. I feel at home on the screen. So many of you know me. Hi, Javanka. I have to laugh because of certain reputations I've acquired. But I'm a I'm not an expert on tenant law, save for the stuff I learned in law school, but I have lived the life of a single mom tenant in Berkeley. I have moved, I moved to Berkeley from New York in 2003, and I have since moved 11 times. My teenager just turned 13, moved 8 times with me. So this is what it's like to get priced out of one's living space continually, to have to uproot oneself and keep moving. It's, you know, one does get a bit of PTSD from all that, and it's really hard to build community. I've been thinking a lot since the convention about the idea of community, because some of the groups didn't like, they felt like I was not part of the community, and it really struck me. And I've been thinking of that idea. I mean, I think the only community I've managed to acquire is really most of the people on the screen. We bled and cried together for 2 Bernie elections, and then some of the local elections. And we are, you know, we've been, what's the word for making iron, steel. We've been forged together in this. Our community has been forged through this battle for Bernie, for our movement. You know, the whole Buffy Jovanka battle was really the establishment, you know, helicoptered Buffy into our community to break the back of our movement. And, you know, they can try all they want, but we're going to fight them. So that's the main reason why I'm running. You know, Bernie gave us the roadmap, and I'm trying to follow it the best I can. Hopefully I won't die from exhaustion and a heart attack in the process, but that's why I'm here. So thank you, and really wonderful to see your faces.
Okay, thank you so much. It's good to see you here too. I'm happy you're running for something. Would anybody like to ask a question? Well, you're getting off the hook easy here. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Since you are using public financing for the election, how do you feel about this process as you go through it, as you went through it?
Which process do you have in mind?
Public financing of this election.
Oh, it is extremely convoluted, as we witnessed through our mishap that Soli had referred to. It's very easy for grassroots candidates to slip on technicalities, and I believe that because of what happened to us, that there's an incentive now to improve the process, to make it a bit more user-friendly for candidates who are not experienced, you know, in running for office. So I don't know if that's what the gist of your question was, but that's
good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Can I add to that just quickly?
Yes,
because
go
I'm
ahead.
I'm the person that this mishap, quote unquote, went through, this happened with, and I just want to talk about community and what it meant to me. I got into a review, a FCPC review commission, where a body of people reviewed my case for public financing because I hadn't signed off on the electronic signature. And because of the strength of the tenants union organizing for me, more than 45 letters were written that day by lunchtime. I mean, in the matter of 2 days, more than 20 people showed up, mostly from the tenants union and the community here to support me, including lawyers, well-known activists. And that is, I think, why I was okay to go forward with my public financing. So yes, it's a double-edged sword. Also, grassroots community organizing makes change, and people can't shut it out when it's strong.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have time for one more question. We have a hand up with Alexandria Rodriguez. You have a question?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your experience, you know, of being a single parent. I'm a mom as well, and, you know, doing work with housing and stuff. But I'm, with your experience as a single mother, which I think plays a really important part when it comes to, you know, placement and elected positions. But I'm just curious, with your experience as a single mother, what, with that experience, what can you bring to the rent board?
Well, my experience and you know, making decisions and thinking from that vantage point, you know, like some younger people or children-less people may not have had, or people who are together and kind of keeping, you know, it's so much easier. So much easier raising a child together, unless you hate each other. But it's an experience that I never thought I would have. It's kind of my worst nightmare come true, and it's been really hard. So I can empathize. That's something I can do.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next candidate. Let's see who we got here. Vanessa Danielle Marrero, and she's a social worker and also a former union organizer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good evening. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Vanessa. My name is Vanessa. I'm a Latina public sector advocate, nonprofit leader. I'm a renter. I'm a parent of a child with a disability and one who is transgendered. I come to you with extensive experience serving the public of over 2 decades in education and serving across nonprofit boards here in the state of California. I do believe that housing is a human right for everyone. I think with inflation being at an all-time high, many of our long-term renters just earn enough to scrape by. And we need strong rental protections that are going to help them to be displaced. I think that the rent stabilization and eviction for good cause ordinance is key to fostering equity-centered policies and practices for our families, for our students, for our individuals with disabilities, and for our elders. I moved to Berkeley over 18 years ago because it exemplified a city where all can thrive, values around justice, peace, and innovation, and I will bring effective public organizational management, action and transparent board coherence, as well as fiscal development and using data-informed practices. In fact, in my most recent appointment to the Justice and Equity for Transformation Council out of the Office of Racial Equity for the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, I weigh in on important decisions and take action across all departments in San Francisco so that they support collective liberation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I'm steadfast in issues related to housing, homelessness, youth, elders, LGBTQIA+, and gender justice, as well as education, and also community wisdom. And I believe it's imperative for our vulnerable communities to be protected and safe by ensuring strong rent stabilization and eviction for good cause ordinances. This includes the work of the 4x4 and the Berkeley City Council, Measure MM, and rental control properties. And by doing so, I think people with exceptionalities, their communities of color and elder, are able to remain in their homes. Throughout all of my experiences as a community leader and a public servant, I believe it positions me with competencies necessary to be an effective rent board commissioner. And I will hear from the community directly, as I have always done across my almost 30 years of service, and walk door by door by understanding their needs well. I appreciate you having me, and thank you. Buenos dias.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to open questioning now. Going once. Okay, wait, did I see? Yeah, okay. Sherry Johansson has a question.
You know, those of us who do not live in Berkeley don't really know too much about the difficulties that people of color and have in that city. And as you brought that up, is there special things that you feel like Berkeley should be doing to have more equity for their rental and in the city?
I think Berkeley is doing really great, right? It's on the map all across California around rent control. So, you know, and also as a Latina, when we look at immigrant populations, we know that there's an influx of Guatemalan and other folks from other countries. I think we need more media and outreach efforts on the ground to really inform our tenants who are living in properties that may or may not be rent controlled. What are their rights? How can they access their rights? And how can they access their rights in a language that they know? And I think that's really critical given the most recent immigrant population surge. And this is something that I believe, you know, given that I'm bicultural and bilingual, I'm going to be able to support particularly well. Thank you.
Okay, is there another question? Okay, would you like to say anything else to wrap up?
Yes, I'd like to say, you know, I'm really honored to be a part of such a dynamic, progressive slate with, you know, very grassroots community leaders. It really does inspire me, and I would like us to think about as we endorse that we want to endorse progressive leaders. We want to endorse folks who have been on the ground, who have rented, who have struggled, who have, you know, been able to advocate and really be a model exemplar. And I encourage you, as you do your work, that you really evaluate all of your endorsements and make sure that they're all mission aligned, right, to what you all believe as well as what we believe, which is that that housing is a human right for everybody, and that we need to make sure that we keep it strong, not only in Berkeley, but also across the state of California. So thank you so much. I'm a very passionate speaker, so I appreciate you hearing me, and thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. Okay, we have one more person on the rent board, Nathan Mizell. I may not be saying the name correctly.
That's correct.
Okay, good. He's vice chair of the Police Accountability Board. He's a former chair of Berkeley's Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. He held a number of positions while he was at Cal. And welcome. We're ready to hear from you.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone for giving me and giving us as a slate this opportunity. Again, my name is Nathan Mizell. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a renter, a recent Cal graduated just this past May. And currently I work as a paralegal at a plaintiff side employment firm where my day-to-day is working to defend the rights of workers. In my work in the city of Berkeley, I serve as the vice chair of the Police Accountability Board. And, you know, instead of going over just titles and this and that, I really wanted to go into, you know, the reasons why I got into this work and why I think it translates to the rent board. Really early on in my time in Berkeley, you know, I asked kind of the question of myself, you know, who polices the police? Who enforces the law on law enforcement? And how could I get involved in that central question and making that a reality? For me, that looked like work on the PRC, then the PAB, then the Mayor's Task Force for Impartial Policing, and then eventually as chair of the Reimagining Task Force. But in essence, that question required me to approach the work in the way that says, I'm going to do everything I can to ensure the rights of Berkeleyans and to ensure that they have their full protections when it comes to police. And I believe I've done that in terms of use of force changes, in terms of advocacy around controlled equipment changes, and generally in terms of how we treat individuals for race and parole, and how we treat Black individuals, brown individuals, other individuals in our city in terms of stop and searches. And I think those same question or essential question translates with housing. Who polices the landlords? Who enforces anything on them? And while I'm still learning about housing law, I'm still learning about the rent board and the full possibilities. What I do know is I will do everything in my power to ensure the rights of tenants, to ensure that the law is properly and fully enforced on landlords, and that we're able to foster a community where housing truly is a human right, where we can have the community we have now and allow folks to join us in this community as well.
Okay, would anybody like to ask questions of Nathan? Michael?
I'm just clapping. I'm not raising a hand.
Oh, okay.
Kabir has a hand up.
Okay, Kabir.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this falls under the jurisdiction of the rent board, but based on your experiences with police reform work, I'm just curious of what your thoughts are. I know a lot of the time tenants and landlords both use the cops to kind of protect themselves during housing disputes. Is there any way that you envision a city and a society where the cops aren't dependent on in those types of situations?
Yes, no, thank you for that question. I will acknowledge I have not specifically researched into tenants and landlords approaching the police in terms of evictions or protection against landlords. But what I will say as a general principle is we have a severe over-reliance on enforcement and generally, enforcement behind a deadly weapon in our country. I would say that clearly, I believe the vast majority of the tasks that are carried out could be done by someone who is not a police officer. And I think we also have seen, and I hope I can send some articles about this, but we've seen in different jurisdictions, I know in San Diego and other cities in California, where the sheriff's office have themselves more or less had arbitrary enforcement of these evictions. They've decided, oh, we'll pick this tenant, we'll pick that tenant. Oh, this tenant gave us a break a couple of years ago. We won't enforce on them so fast. Oh, well, this landlord's violating the law. Well, they did us a favor, we're okay. We've seen this preferential treatment even in sheriff's offices themselves. So I think it really broadens the question of what is the point of having them as the first point for issues like this. I think there should be something else, and I'd be curious as to seeing, what folks, what folks see as being the best solution in that area.
Okay, would anybody else like to ask a question of Nathan? Okay, Nathan, is there anything else you'd like to say, just to wrap up?
Yeah, I'd say just quickly and brief, I know I'm probably the newest face here. So I'm really jumping into all of this. I'm welcome to learning. I'm welcome to having conversations with folks. Give me a call. I think my number's out there. If not, I can drop in the chat as well. I'm learning. I want to learn more. And, I really approach this as, working together with the slate. This is really about none of us in particular, but all of us as tenants, all of us as folks who believe in rent control, believe in tenant protections, believe in these very fundamental things. And that's, to me, what this is truly about.
Okay, great. Well, that concludes the rent board candidates. And good luck to all of you. And I hope we see some of you out at the Solano Stroll. Contact me directly about that, or I'll contact one of you and have you guys figure it out. Okay, so the next part, most of the groups we're doing, like rent board had 5, school board has several, city council has several, but we have one office, AC Transit Director for Ward 4, where we only have one candidate, and she's not here yet. So, Jovanka, can you stick around a little bit?
Absolutely. In fact, I can probably, I don't know if like she had a certain time.
Yes, she did. It was 4:40 to 4:45 roughly.
Oh, I think I had 5:40 on my, was what I had. But I can kind of text her and let her know that, yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll get started on the school board. And
Well, that's my cue. Here I
well,
come.
just a second, we didn't start yet.
Oh,
We're
okay.
about to. And I think if, when Barisha gets here, we'll go ahead and stick her in the middle of the school board and then go back to the school board.
Sounds like a plan. Give me a
Okay.
nudge when she shows up.
Yeah, okay, so our next group is going to be people that are school board candidates from Berkeley, from Oakland, Albany, a couple from Oakland, a couple from Berkeley. And that they're going to be introduced and moderated by Mark Van Landet, who I know everybody here has to know. So I all I can say is he's awesome. I love working with him. We have many a time gone door to door, passed out leaflets, etc. Thank you, Mark, so much.
This will be very moderately moderated by myself. I just want to quickly say that I'm always so moved when I hear grassroots candidates say why they're running for office. You know, people that are running with purpose. They're not career politicians. And over, the term that comes back to me when I listen to them is compassion. And that's a word that's not used a lot in American politics, you know, where it's characterized by a certain hardness and playing hardball and all this kind of stuff. But all of our progressive candidates turning compassion into policy and putting compassion into our society where we're not against each other. We're all in this together. Revolutionary compassion. And so I'm always moved hearing grassroots candidates speak. So just had to put that in there. Okay. Education. Education is an issue we take very seriously here in the East Bay. It has always been central to the mission of our progressive movement. Our Revolution East Bay, we did nonstop campaigning for Elisa Castro, along with the progressive movement, and which resulted in a very happy victory of Elisa Castro as our Alameda County superintendent. So let's start with—
Wait, Mark.
Oh.
The interruption is now. Barisha has arrived.
I was just getting started. Okay.
Well, yeah, so we'll do it now instead of
Everybody.
Okay, so
You weren't being interrupted for, Barisha.
Our next candidate is the one person that we have here tonight running for AC Transit Director, Ward 3, Barisha Spriggs.
Yay!
And we're very excited that we have Javanka Beckles here, who we all know, and Javanka's going to introduce her.
And she's running for Ward 4, not Ward 3.
Yeah, Ward 4.
I thought I said 4. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, Ward 4 is, and I'm sure she can tell you the exact cities. It's unincorporated areas of Castro Valley and such. But I just want to hey everybody, it's always good to see my siblings. You know, under whatever reasons, it's good to see y'all. So I have the pleasure of introducing Barisha because, you know, as we all know, we've seen her everywhere. We've seen her in all the fights that matters to us as progressives. We saw her in the fight with Bernie. We've seen her in the fight for labor. She is a part of this movement, and I hope that we can all come together and endorse her. Barisha was not appointed, unfortunately, during the appointment process. And I say it with a heavy heart because there were over 30 people who emailed the board members, who called in that day to ask for Barisha to be appointed. Even ATU, which is, you know, the operators of AC Transit, the ones who do the driving, even their president sent in a letter requesting that the board listen to them, and the board ignored them. Not only did they ignore the union, they ignored Mark Williams, whose seat that Barisha was trying to get appointed to. They ignored dozens and dozens of voters and riders, and I thought that was a shame and unfortunate. But here we are, and she's having to run for this seat. And the person that she's running against is a retired corporate executive. And, you know, we don't need more corporate executives in the elected office. What we need are working class people, right, who have that lived experience and understand what it means to struggle to get from point A to point B. Barisha is transit dependent. And so siblings, I hope that we all will come together and endorse her and help her win the seat that should have been hers had my colleagues listened to the constituents, the voters, and the riders. Barisha.
Yes. Hey everyone. I'm excited to be here. You know, I've lived in Ward 4 for nearly 30 years. Ward 4 is it's Hayward, it includes Hayward, all of the unincorporated areas. The unincorporated areas are 140,000 people, including they're all one cluster. And I live in the unincorporated area. I live in Ashland, and we're all, you know, adjacent to one another, all of the unincorporated areas. And of course, we don't have city level government or services, so we need a little bit more attention for everything because we're at a disadvantage here. It also includes 20% of Stanley Andrew, the Ward 4. So I've been, people know me, I've been around, I've been in the community, I've been on the, you know, on the regional level, state level, and, you know, everything. So I'm fighting because I do ride AC Transit every day. I've seen the struggles that we've had, particularly in the unincorporated area, getting services and the struggle. I am the catalyst for the $2 million emergency repave and the $20 million East 14th Street Corridor Improvement Project. I've been here nearly 30 years, and it took just that long for us to get our sewer pipes switched out, to get street lights, to get new bus shelters, to get the safer sidewalks, the bike lanes, and the safer crosswalks. I nearly fell in a gigantic pothole walking across East 14th Street, and I went and I talked to Bill Quirk, and I was a catalyst for the whole project because it was under Caltrans, and Caltrans wasn't doing anything. And so I'm basically the catalyst not only for Ashland, but also for the other parts of the unincorporated area that got their improvements as well, like San Lorenzo and Hesperian. And I know how to get the job done. I have a proven record of doing that. I will do the same thing when I get on AC Transit. I want to extend out the bus rapid transit all the way south down the East 14th corridor, East 14th mission, so that our riders can have an opportunity for more convenience, to increase the ridership, and to make it a one-of-a-kind place for getting people out of their cars. I've already been working with Alameda County Transportation Commission, even starting 5 years ago. They were here. Actually, Matt Turner brought them here to Ashland, and I was involved with the surveys. So they have been looking for grants to get that work done, including getting the shareable bikes, like, you know, Oakland and Berkeley have all of those different things that are going to get people out of their cars. So it's up to the will of the AC Transit Board to actually get that BRT done. But it's, and I want to go there and I want to get this done, and I want to create livable, wonderful livable communities and increase our opportunities for transportation. I want to get the, I want to have the transit oriented development here. So we have more affordable housing close to the transit, more walkable communities. That is my vision and that is my goal. And I'm definitely determined to get it done.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions?
We actually spent 6 minutes total, so there's no time.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you so much, Barisha. We're glad you're here, and unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to vote for you because of where I live, but good luck to you. Okay, we're gonna move on now. We're going back to Mark, and Mark, Mike Hutchinson is at a campaign event and he would like to go first. Can you,
Not a
could you
problem.
do that?
We'll hit Oakland Unified School District first. Just want to quickly say, always happy to have Jovanka with us, who's not only a friend, but a hero to all of us in the progressive movement. And Barisha, who is not only a friend, but a real model. I mean, everything I know about the unincorporated areas is because of her tireless activism and advocacy. So anyway, it's great to have you with us. All right. Oakland Oakland Unified School District, it's faced tumultuous, times facing COVID closures and cuts. Our first person speaking, he was an organizer coming into the office, and he has remained an organizer as an elected official. Please, I'm going to turn over the microphone to Mr. Mike Hutchinson. Mike.
Wow, thank you for the kind welcome. Thank you for having me here today and letting me jump in here now. I'm sorry, I'm at a campaign event right now. And I was elected to the Oakland School Board in 2020 in District 5, where we put together a coalition of progressive labor and education justice warriors.
We lost you, Mike.
Oh. Well, that was dramatic. Mike, if you can hear us, we can't hear you.
Yes, of course.
Oh, it's very, very shaky.
You're mostly off the air. You're breaking up.
Mike, if you can go in a clear open space, maybe. You know what, Mike? We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you if you can hear me. Stay in Oakland. Oh, Mike, we can see you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can. Hit it.
Okay. Yes, I came out front. I am sorry about that. And of course, right when I started, everything cut out. So I'll try to go briefly. My name is Mike Hutchinson. I was elected to the Oakland School Board in District 5 in 2020, when we put together a coalition of progressives, labor, and education justice warriors. Now, in the last year, the family house that I've lived in for over 40 years has been redistricted to District 4. And I am the only elected official in Oakland who has been redistricted. So given that, I'm now running to represent my new district, District 4, in this year's elections, and also to make sure that District 5 will still have a representative that lives in District 5, or the new District 5. And so in 2020, I was elected on a platform to end school closures and the financial mismanagement in OUSD, and really for the safe and equitable reopening of our schools during the pandemic. I think we've made a lot of progress. USD's finances, but we're now projecting a surplus the next 2 years, and we are poised to finally leave state receivership next year for the first time in 20 years. And although we were able to end the blueprint school closure process, 4 school board directors came with a new school closure plan. And with 3 of those 4 directors leaving office this November, and us having swept out 7 incumbents in one election cycle, we're really poised to have a new direction going forward and use these new state surplus dollars to fund change that we've all wanted. So I can again count on everyone's support in this election cycle. And again, if we have the victories that we need, we can immediately rescind the school closures that are planned for this year and have a new way of doing business going forward.
Mike, I'll go ahead and ask the first question. Going into a new district, what challenges do you face in District 4 that are new for you?
Well, one of the things is I'm not going into a new district. My whole neighborhood that I've lived in for over 40 years was put into a new district, along with pieces of other neighborhoods. So thankfully, I have deep connections to all of Oakland, but I am still living in the same place. And so just for tonight, the campaign event that I'm at tonight, is for parents at one of my new schools in District 4. And I have relationships with these. Their school is slated for closure at the end of this year, and we've already been organizing together for 6 months. So I think it's going to be the same issues that we face in every election cycle. My last 3 elections, I had over $1 million spent against me by charter advocates and billionaires. And it's really making sure we can put together a people-powered campaign to again counter those dollars.
Well, Mike, I have complete faith in your organizing abilities to do that. We have questions. Kabir, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hey, Mike. So usually I ask candidates who come here about who their opponent is, so I can see how they talk about their opponent. But in your situation, it's actually ranked choice voting. And I know OEA has endorsed another candidate. So are you planning on running like a dual kind of ranked choice vote with the OEA endorsed candidate against the corporate candidate, or are you not planning that yet?
Well, there's no plan for this other candidate who's running against me. Who does that play?
Oh, Mike, it's very shaky. Very difficult to make out what you're saying.
With all due respect, you should ask OEA that question, because OEA didn't even give me the number 2 endorsement. And as the son of a 50-year member, my family is not very happy about that.
Oh, dear. Well, I think we lost Mike. If he comes back on, we'll let him finish his. I see Mike.
He's back.
If there's questions, maybe I'll just have to answer them at another time.
Sure. Mike, get back to your campaign event. Go ahead and be there.
Okay.
Our door is always open to you.
So here's the one difference in the new district. They have weaker Wi-Fi service than I'm used to.
Mike, good luck to you. We'll talk to you again, as always. Our door is open to you, as always. Speaking of endorsed by OEA, our next candidate is running for District 6 for Oakland Unified School District 6. He is a engineer, a business owner, and he is endorsed by the Oakland Education Association. We're very glad he made the time this afternoon. Please welcome Joel Velasquez. Joel?
Thank you, Mark. Can you guys hear me okay? I just want to check in first. Okay. Just give me a thumb or a down if my sound goes. I am at home right now. So first of all, thank you, Mark, and everyone for having me and taking the time on a Sunday to do this important work. It means a lot to all of us in the community in and around the Bay Area. So thank you. And Mark, you said something great. You took some of my thunder, but I think it's great to piggyback around compassion. And for those of you that may not know me, I've known Director Hutchinson for 10 years. We actually met when I led a sit-in at Lakeview when there were 5 elementary schools, including my children's school scheduled to close. And that's how Mike and I got connected and met the year leading up to that sit-in at Lakeview, during, and ever since. So Mike and I worked together. We co-founded Open. But let me get back to, I guess, a little bit of me personally. So I am a father of 3 kids. I've been in Oakland for 30 years, and D6 for almost a decade. I have 2 proud graduates from Oakland Tech, and my youngest still attends Edna Brewer. I've been spending in the last decade or 2, probably thousands and thousands of hours of my own personal time around advocating for families, communities, and sites throughout Oakland. I've even traveled with Director Hutchinson to DC and Baltimore when we testified with the Department of Education in 2013, asking for a moratorium and telling Oakland's story with the Department of Education there in Washington, DC. There we became co-founders of Journey for Justice, which I'm not sure if some of you know, but you can go ahead and pull them up. In my opinion, they are the leading national grassroots organization around advocating for public education nationally. Why that's important to me, and I got myself on a timer here. I learned on that trip in DC instantly when I spoke to families and children from 19 different states that the same story and the same experiences we were seeing here in Oakland were happening across the country. So I got to had the light bulbs put on instantly in that trip and putting some of the pieces of what really was going on. So I'll park it there because of time, but I'm more than just an activist. I'm more than just an organizer. I'm more than just a father. I'm someone that cares, like Mark said, deeply around our public education system and our communities that need those resources the most.
Thank you so much for that. Is there any questions from our Kabir? Go ahead. Kabir's very reliable. Go for it.
Hey there. Who are your opponents? And if possible, are you planning on running a ranked choice collective race with any of your opponents?
Yeah, great question. So Kira is really the opponent. Kira Mungia, she is paid by privatizers. She works under David Silva, under Libby's office. And she, is aligned with Go, has supported charters, which she's changed the story recently. And, if you want more details on that, but she really is the other side. Valerie Batchelor, we are gonna do a ranked choice. Obviously, we both will be saying that we're number one and the other is number two. OEA, for some reason, did a ranked choice for her one and me too, just them specifically. And just to speak on it, I think it's because she's already involved with labor. She's a paid organizer through AFT, through Peralta. And I think, OEA believes, well, her husband is also a teacher at OEA. And they just believe they'll have more of a, let's say, a partner or someone they can influence. But to that point, in case anyone's wondering, I've been at every single march, rally. I've spoken in favor of contracts for teachers, and I have letters through, from teachers throughout the district from the last 20 years that have literally worked with me and me advocating for better conditions for our teachers. So I think with that said, I think there's more of a play with politics than there is with actually having a better candidate in that window. But with that said, Valerie is an okay second choice.
All right. Jerry, go ahead.
Joelle, we started out with saying that people can ask hard questions. So I have a really hard question.
Sure.
My grandkids are go to public school in Oakland. And realistically, when do you think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as stopping the closing of schools, having quality education in Oakland, balanced budgets, all those hard things?
Yeah, I think, so I'm going to put my timer on for 90 seconds. I think that's a really good question. And I actually believe, and we didn't get a chance to hear Director Hutchinson mention a few things, but I think we're at a point where step one is flipping this board and getting people that really understand not just public education here in Oakland, but what's kind of happening on the national stage. So to your question, that step one is that, right? We got to get myself, keep Mike on that board, and at least get 2 more seats, which I believe and feel confident that we're at that point. That's step one, because without that, we don't have control. I mean, let's just be really honest about that, right? And that goes back to why I'm running. Number two, there's been no fiscal analysis that closing schools saved the district any money for the last 19 years. And there's an ACLU complaint right now on civil rights violations around attacking Black and brown communities and school closures. So I think in Oakland specifically, the information is out there. Now we have sustainable community school money coming in, to your question, right? So if we're not saving money closing schools, we end that, right? That's what Mike and I are running on. We're going to end school closures. Step two, money is starting to come in right now that's already been approved by the state that we're going to get money for sustainable community schools. Now the question is that long-term money? No, it's 60 million plus, around 67 million a year. But here's part 3 of that. We have a very large central office staff. We are heavy top-sided. And if we took a deep dive into that, there's actually probably close to 10 million, if not more, of money that we can save that are long-term permanent dollars. So there's more steps to this, but because of the timing, I just want to let you know that we do have a plan. We end the school closures. We have the money right now to start providing those monies and funding for resources. And then we take a really deep dive into central office staff. There has already been an audit completed by OUSD that we already know. We are top heavy, and that has to change permanently. And that'll also root out some of the bad, well, let me rephrase that because I am being diplomatic. It'll root out some of the bad culture around some of these lifelong employees in OUSD that are not there for the kids, right? So we'll just park it there.
Wow. Wow. Joel, you said some hard truths right there. That's really impressive. I did not expect to hear something like that. We're in a strange period where more money is coming in, and yet education is still being put on the chopping block time and time again. And we are just encountering these crises on the local level over and over again. Anyway, well, thank you so much for that. That was really bracing. I really appreciate that. Joel Velasquez, ready for District 6, Oakland District 6. Thank you so much for making the time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a great evening, okay? Thank you so much.
Now we're going to go a little bit north. Sorry for my little editorializing, but education is the most important thing that our society can do. It's really, and somehow it's like last in the list of priorities, right after, bringing in the janitors and having the garbage removed. Then someone thinks about, oh yes, we can't forget about education. So anyway, I'm glad to hear these advocates for teachers, for students, and for parents, and for our communities. Okay, let's go to Albany. Albany, we have with us someone who's running for the Albany School District. She is a parent. She has worked on education policy, including housing and food security. We're very glad that she made the time this afternoon. Please welcome Sadia Kahn. Sadia Kahn, forgive me if I mispronounced that.
All good. Sadia Kahn.
Sadia Kahn, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Awesome. So, hello, everyone. My name is Sadia Kahn. I'm an Albany resident. I actually came here as a student, UC Berkeley student, lived in UC Village for the past 4 years and spent over 7 years advocating for higher education policy, anywhere from housing and food security to Title IX, mental health, expanding financial aid. All of those things are issues that I've worked on, from the UC campaign to the tuition rollbacks. Higher education and just education in general holds a very, very dear place in my heart. And, as somebody who was a student that was considered, at risk of not graduating and so forth, and basically being kind of ignored when teachers and counselors should have supported me and helped me achieve what, any other student should have access to. So this is an issue that's very personal to me, and I see a lot of that happening now, even at a USD, and I want to make sure that our students have the access and support they need. During the pandemic, while I saw a lot of folks kind of ignoring the needs of parents and parenting students, I took it upon myself to basically say, no, we cannot allow our parents and our children to struggle while we're going through a global pandemic. So I worked on a $50,000 grant to provide supplies and just kind of stuff that would help bring back some joy in relation to education and mental health, specifically for our children at UC Village. UC Village is part of Albany, but it's also a kind of forgotten space because we live in a mixed identity of being part of UC Berkeley, yet being housed in the city of Albany. So we're kind of that minority within a minority within a minority. And a lot of the majority of the residents are low income, a lot of single parent households, a lot of families with disabilities, LGBTQ. That's my timer for 2 minutes. But the point is, this is a battle that's very close to my heart, and that's why I'm here to make sure our children have the voice that they need. Thank you.
Sadia, I'll go with the first question. I'm just wondering how different the issues of Albany are from, say, Oakland or Berkeley. What is the most pressing education issue in Albany, do you believe?
That's a tough one because there's a number of issues. I think COVID really hit our children with just kind of made everything so much worse, in the sense of between our children are really struggling with mental health support. We literally had kids as young as elementary students thinking about suicide. And that is quite frightening, and the fact that we don't have the resources to support those children. And instead we were just kind of, like we need them to go back to school and so forth. So mental health is a huge one. And it's no different than Oakland or Berkeley. Like these are issues across many school boards. The other big one is our teachers struggle to teach in Albany, but they can't live there because they can't afford to live in the city of Albany. Those are just like top two right off the bat, but also there's an equity gap between our Black and brown students. They are not performing as high as our white students. And, that's something that we need to look at as well. And so, making sure that all of our students have equal access to the resources that they need, not only to do well and enjoy school, but also to make sure that they're graduating high school with opportunities, to go to college and so forth. It shouldn't be an issue of only some students in specific demographics being ready for anything beyond high school. So these are just kind of like the top issues that are on my mind.
Sadia, thank you for that. Question goes to Kabir. Kabir.
Hi there. Who are your opponents and how many seats are open?
I saw that question coming. Thank you for that. So there are 3 seats open right now. So it's not, I wouldn't call them opponents because it's kind of a complicated race because there's 3 seats open, 4 people filed, but 1 candidate has informed us that she is withdrawing from this race. However, legally her name will still be on the ballot. She will still be in this race. So myself and the other 2 candidates, Becky Hopwood, who is also a parent, and then Ron Rosenbaum, who is an educator. The 3 of us are planning to work together in some capacity to kind of just make sure that Albany residents are aware of what's going on, but also working together because it seems we're all very much aligned and we're all very excited to be working together for the school board. I hope that answers it.
Any other questions for Sadia? Sadia Kahn, running for Albany School Board. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we go to Berkeley. And I've been prompted here and I will follow the prompt. So the first person we're going to hear from, she has been endorsed by all of our friends, Ginny Wong, Kate Harrison, Tony Thurman. And if she doesn't mind me saying, in the community, her campaign is really, really buzzing, really. And so please help me welcome Jennifer Shanoski. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I hope the buzz is a good buzz and not a bee sting buzz. My name is Jennifer Shanoski. Tell you a little bit about myself to start. I'm a single mom of 2 Berkeley Unified kids. I have a 5th grader at Malcolm X and an 8th grader at King. I came to Berkeley from Detroit to earn my PhD in physical chemistry and shifted away from the hard sciences to pursue a career teaching chemistry at Merritt College, one of our 4 community colleges in the Peralta district. Among other things, as a faculty member there, I founded a chemistry club oriented toward community service and outreach, and I served as the principal investigator on a grant aimed at diversifying our sciences. Since 2017, I've proudly served as the president of my local, the Peralta Federation of Teachers, where I've championed a number of different issues that all lead to investment in our classrooms and our students. I fought for and won pay parity for our part-time workforce, the first in the state of California and the community college system. And I was really proud to stand by my union brothers and sisters to do that. I'm running because public education, I think, is one of the only things left in our country that can actually even come close to leveling playing fields. Public education has been a real home for me. It's been a home for my children. And I just feel that it is important to give back to a system that has given me so much. My priorities include closing our opportunity and achievement gaps with an emphasis on STEM education, teacher retention and recruitment, and really bringing in organizers' perspective to authentic engagement and listening to everyone in our community, students, teachers, parents, staff, and community members. I'm endorsed by the mayor of Berkeley, 7 out of 8 council members in Berkeley, 4 out of 5 school board members, Senator Nancy Skinner, Superintendent of Public Schools, Tony Thurmond. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, Berkeley Council of Classified Employees, the Alameda Labor Council, the Alameda Building and Construction Trades Council, Latinos Unidos de Berkeley, and others. And I feel that I really won.
2 minutes.
Whoops, sorry. These endorsements are really important to me because I have gotten them through my work in the community every single day. And I'll bring that same energy to the school board and to the city of Berkeley. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Jennifer? My goodness.
Come on, Kabir. I'm counting on you.
Kabir, go ahead.
Hi there. Who are your opponents and how many seats are open?
Yeah, so there are 3 seats open. It's an at-large district, so the entire city of Berkeley votes in this campaign. We have one candidate who is an incumbent, Khadijah Brown. She's currently serving as president of the school board. The one and only Mike Chang, who I believe you'll hear from next, is also running. Reichi Lee, a parent and fitness instructor, is running. Tatiana Gutierrez Ramos, I hope I pronounced her name right, is also running. And Norma, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her last name.
Harrison.
Is Norma here?
No.
And
Harrison,
thank you, is also running.
Ida, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Are you guys, do you have a slate the way we do, or are you all running separately?
We do not actually have a slate. If I may say so, Mike, give me a nod. Mike, Khadijah, and I are all endorsed by labor, and Mike and I are coordinating a lot on our campaigns, but we don't have a specific slate. There's a little bit of different people are endorsing different people. So, yeah. But,
okay, thanks.
That's where the politics comes in. Jovanka, you have a question.
Hi, Jovanka.
Hi, I'm. How are you? There I am. Now, so I'm trying to understand your race. So, are you running against Khadijah Brown? I'm unfortunately, I'm just not really, up on top of that race.
So there are 3 open seats. So everybody in Berkeley gets to vote for 3 people. I was super psyched to hear that Khadijah was going to run again. I think she's, great on the board, and I support her campaign. So I would encourage folks to vote for Khadijah, me, and Mike.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, Jennifer and I have been on meet and greets together with Khadijah and a number of them. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Jennifer, I know you need to go. Again, thank you for making the time. And Jennifer Shanoski, forgive me, say your last name one more time. And forgive all the candidates, forgive me for mangling your names.
You did it perfectly in the beginning. It's actually just like it's spelled, Shanoski. Yeah,
Jennifer, thank you so much.
Website in the chat. Thank you so much. Nice to see so many familiar faces.
And speaking of the previously mentioned Mike Chang, he is with us now. He's been endorsed by the Alameda Labor Council and the Teachers Union, and by our friends Kate Harrison, Jesse Aragine. Soli is endorsed, and Alfred True. So those are high recommendations from our world. Please welcome Mike Chang. Mike.
Thank you. And don't forget Rigel, who's here. He's endorsed me as well, really gratefully. I'm so pleased to be here. This group is a great group, and I'm very excited to speak to you. So I've got 3 kids in Berkeley who've gone through the district. 2 of them are at Berkeley High School. I'm on the Berkeley PTA. I'm a vice president on the PTA. I have 12 years in at Berkeley, and I've got 3 more years. I'm also a U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights attorney, where I enforce anti-discrimination laws to ensure that students have fair access to public schools. In that position, I'm also the co-chair of the Diversity Inclusion Council across the Department of Education, over 4,400 employees, where I'm also the rep of the American Federation of Government Employees. So I'm a labor person at the U.S. Department of Education, but also the D&I chair. In the meantime, I also teach at UC Berkeley in ethnic studies, where I received a PhD in the ethnic studies department before I went to law school and received a degree in critical race studies concentration. I'm very excited to be speaking with you. The reason why I'm running for school board is to bring my 15 years experience at the Office of Civil Rights, resolving systemic issues with regard to sexual violence under Title IX, race issues with hostile climate, with harassment, and also disability issues across the state of California and across the country to ensure that students have equitable access to education. I am inspired by Bernie's speaking power to truth, and I seek to resolve some ongoing Title IX and disability and race harassment issues at Berkeley Unified, which is a great district, but needs some help in that area and could use my legal assistance, and it should be an exemplar for the rest of the country. I seek full staffing for programs and services to ensure implementation. And in the meantime, I want to create wellness centers across the district. There's my alarm. Wellness centers across the district to provide culturally relevant and psychoeducational services to all students, and for them to have that opportunity to de-escalate and work with teachers to have that environment when they have a hard day. Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for that. Mike, I don't know if you heard yourself say, but you said speaking power to truth, which I like.
Power,
I think
yeah.
I think that has an
Yeah.
evocative beauty to it. So
Power to truth. Wow. Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
I mean the opposite though. I gotta think about that. Yeah.
Is there any questions from our members? Kabir, go ahead.
So I guess I don't have to ask you what your opponents are, but today is the day I officially learned that Berkeley doesn't have ranked choice voting.
Right.
Yeah, it does not have ranked choice
but
for
it does
voting.
council. So I guess my question is, do you have a stance on ranked choice voting for elections? And then secondly, how do you think that would change the current election?
So I got the first question, but I couldn't hear your second one. Your connections was a little hard. And sorry, my dog is barking right now. But I believe in ranked choice voting. You know, the school board.
Did I get cut off?
Yeah, now it's better. Oh, now it's
Kabir, we couldn't hear that last part of your question.
Yeah.
All right, Kabir, we're gonna have to give up on you. Your connection is bad.
The question is, how do you think you would?
Sorry, it's hard to hear. It does sound rather robotic, kind of Darth Vader-ish. So it's hard to hear you. Sorry. I did the ranked choice voting. I support it. You know, in the district, in Berkeley, citywide.
Second part of the question is, how do you think if you did have ranked choice voting, how do you think it would affect the current election?
Oh, I see. I see. You punch it into the chat. You know, that's hard for me to tell. You know, as Jennifer said, we've got three really great candidates. I don't want to pat myself in the back, but just three strong candidates with Jennifer and myself. We're working together very closely. But also we work with Khadija. She's an incumbent, and I think it's going to bring in a lot of subject matter expertise into the district. You know, there are a total of, I think, 6 candidates, and ranked choice could potentially change the dynamics of around who is endorsed by the unions. But typically, this is a strong town in terms of teacher unions. People understand that unions are really important to positive outcomes and to recruitment and retention of good teachers. And they understand that a BFT, Berkeley Federation of Teachers, and I'm also endorsed by the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees union as well, that those endorsements reflect the interests of the ability of teaching labor and staff to reach the outcomes of teaching, the goals of the mission of public school teaching, which is to provide robust education that's equitable and accessible. So it's hard to say in Berkeley, but I do think the unions would still have an important say with their endorsements. So that's how I kind of understand the potential impact of ranked choice.
Thank you for that. Michael, final question. Our schools face so many crises. What crises do you foresee? Do you see any crises on the horizon that we need to be preparing for and dealing with now, getting ahead of?
Yeah, there's many crises or crises that nationally that we're dealing with public schools. You know, I see this firsthand as a government attorney for public schools on civil rights. So the main thing is learning loss, as our neighbor up north had stated in Albany. That's a main issue, along with mental health issues. Learning loss requires a response that's individualized to each student's needs. That's the point of a great education like we have in Berkeley, to have full staffing so that each student can have individualized education specific to their needs, as individualized to how the learning loss that may have been impacted possibly by remote learning and the pandemic, and certainly anxiety issues, depression issues, alienation issues that are in general with young people are an issue, but also staff too. I would like to put in place, which I've done in other school districts in my resolution agreements, wellness centers across Berkeley Unified that are fully staffed, are culturally relevant, have psychoeducational services, can target de-escalation, positive behavioral interventions to reduce the very large school to discipline disparity on the basis of race in Berkeley, which is 7.1 times more likely for an African-American student to be disciplined than a white student. But underneath that and associated with it, there's a lot of systemic issues with regard to Title IX sexual violence responses that have popped up in the news. English language learners, 20% of Berkeley Unified are Latin speakers. I'm a first-generation American. My parents were immigrants, and I understand what it's like to have limited English proficiency parents where you have to sometimes translate for them when people don't understand their accents, for example. So these are all issues that Berkeley, for one reason or another, and I know the reasons, but I know, I have a plan for how to address this. In particular, they need the full staff, not send out services to outside counsel, which are expensive and reduce your overall budget. Berkeley, for one reason or another, in the last 10 years has gathered a reputation for kicking things to litigation instead of full staffing. That means it needs to listen better to the union and to reprioritize. There's a new superintendent coming to town. I'm very excited about that. It's a new opportunity. And there's likely 2 new board members coming in working with Khadijah Brown, who's had a great track record already. So I'm very excited to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Chang, thank you so much, running for Berkeley School Board. Thank you to all the school board candidates. Oh, for Berkeley, our Berkeley voters, don't forget, 3 seats, 3 people you're going to be voting for.
Mark, there's still one from Berkeley you haven't done.
I think she's not present.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up early. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Carol. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the candidates. Thank you for making the time today.
Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Yeah, I thought she was here. Maybe she had to leave. Okay, we're going to move on to city council candidates now. And Sherry Johansson, who's also on our Revolution East Bay board, is going to be introducing people. And I think we have 4 candidates. Sherry's activist. She was living in Alameda for a long time, and she was, I believe, president of the City of Alameda Democratic Club. She's a very, very strong progressive activist. Sherry.
Yay.
Thank you, Carol. Mark, I would add to your C word of compassion, community.
Yes.
I think one of the things that we're looking for in candidates is how they support a diverse and inclusive community. Sometimes it comes down to one person who can stand up for an individual or an idea on these city councils. So I want to thank everybody for staying with us this long, because this is really important. These people can make a difference. The first person I'd like to introduce is Jim Oddie. Yeah, Alameda sometimes has a reputation of not being so diverse and to not being very inclusive. But Jim Oddie, when he was on the council, stood up for renters' rights, was able to pass rent control and to make no reason, what's it called? No reason evictions. Yeah, no cause of evictions part of Alameda, which was no easy task. So Jim Oddie, can you tell us about your campaign this time?
Sure, thanks, Sherry. How much time do we get for the opening?
2 minutes.
Okay, let me just quickly start my clock. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time on a Saturday afternoon, Sherry. I just came back from the ARC picnic and we missed you there, but you were there in spirit, so I appreciate it. My name is Jim Oddie, as Sherry said. I had the honor to serve 6 years on council and really create what I thought is a strong record of progressive values. We increased our minimum wage faster than the state. We brought cannabis into Alameda, which was a big struggle because it seems to be a little more conservative. We passed multiple project labor agreements to support lift up our working families. We supported a Trump impeachment. We supported a divestiture of Wells Fargo for our city bank accounts, sanctuary city, as Sherry mentioned, some tenant protections, declaring a climate change emergency. And the reason I list all those is because that's at risk. We did that with a strong progressive majority, and one of our folks, John Knox White, is retiring from the council. And like Sherry just said, sometimes it takes one vote, right? We saw Roe v. Wade fall because we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it's just one person that can make a difference. The reason I'm running again is one, to protect those, and two, to make sure that the things I care about are taken care of in Alameda. We have a housing crisis. People ask me my top 3 priorities. And I'm not joking, I say housing, housing, housing. You don't have to make up any other ones because really that's what it's all about. And everything is all, to use kind of a buzzword, intersectional, right? Whether we're talking about affordable housing, we have our housing element, we have past wrongs that need to be righted. I was a big proponent of eliminating our racist zoning from our charter. Unfortunately, that failed, but the state just gave us a thumbs up on our housing element last week and said, we're making progress. We need to provide more homeless services. We passed a measure in Alameda to support a wellness center. I mean, it seems like something's pretty basic, right? But it's been 3 years that we've been fighting for that, and it still continues to move. People continue to oppose it. And then, of course, tenant protection. We passed just cause eviction and a rent cap. And one last thing before I think my time is almost up, but one of the things I'm most proud of, we didn't get this passed, but I introduced a referral along with my colleague to declare racism as a public health emergency in Alameda. That was 2 years ago when it really, and it still is a public health emergency. But one positive thing that came out of that, I've been long a supporter of something called community paramedicine, but we were able to leverage our 6 years of community paramedicine into a care team, which now provides alternate response, for someone in mental health distress instead of sending cops there. So very proud of that. It was passed after I left, but the foundation was put there when I was there.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have any questions for Mr. Oddie? Gordon. Gordon, do you want to unmute? Gordon Miller?
Yes, I lived in Alameda in the 70s and 80s, and I experienced what Alameda housing is. You've mentioned affordable housing, and apparently you're for increasing the housing stock in Alameda. Would that include affordable housing, or would you be letting the realtors decide what that's going to be, like market rate housing?
Well, we have two things in Alameda that I think are also different than some other cities, like Oakland, where you can pay a fee in lieu of affordable housing. Any project that comes into Alameda has a 15% affordable housing requirement. So that's number one. And number two, thanks to Renewed Hope, Laura Thomas, and folks like that 20 years ago, if you build on Alameda Point, which is the old naval base, there's a 25% affordable housing requirement. And our previous city manager took the position that it hasn't been controverted, that doesn't count against the cap because we have a cap of about 1,800 units that can be built there before a developer would have to pay a premium, and it's about 100,000 now. But our first project we approved had 25% affordable. The next project on deck is called the Reshape Project, which is to take people out of this housing group now called the Alameda Point Collaborative, which is for formerly unhoused folks, veterans, people that can't normally afford, kind of build a new facility for them. So the more we can put on Alameda Point, if 1 out of 4 of every new unit has to be affordable housing, we're going to get affordable housing at the point that way too.
Thank you, Jim. And Kabir. Let's see if your connection is back.
Can you hear me?
Kind of.
You're still echoing.
Hi.
I'm going to skip you for a minute and go to Vanessa. Vanessa? Vanessa, you had your hand up.
Sorry, I just put something in my mouth.
I think I see Kabir's, he says, how many seats are up and who are your opponents?
Yeah.
So do you mind if I answer that?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
there are 2 seats in Alameda. We all run at large. There is 1 open seat and then 1 incumbent, Tony Desog, who's, I wouldn't call him progressive. He's a friend of landlords. He's not a friend of tenants. I'll just leave it at that. So he's up for re-election and his seat is up. So he's one of the opponents. There's 2 guys from Bay Farm that have pretty much said we don't want to build housing in our neighborhood, and if we get elected, we want to switch that housing somewhere else. And then there's Hannah Gross, who works for the San Francisco Housing Authority, who's super. We share values, so I'm excited that she's in the race. And then another person, Tracy Jensen, who's been on our school board 10, 15 years ago, and who's coming off 8-year term on our hospital board.
Thank you. Okay, now can we go to Vanessa? Vanessa, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious to hear, sort of a 2-part question. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the plans to expand the Oakland airport. And there is a no expansion movement underfoot. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. They want to add, I think, 18 new gates to the airport and expand it. And then the sort of codicil to that is, it looks like you have not yet signed the no fossil fuel money pledge. I'm curious if you plan to. Thanks.
Well, the second one I'll answer first. Yes, I'll sign that. I mean,
I'll put the link in the chat. Thank you.
There's not a line of fossil fuel folks to contribute to my campaign, but I know in the past PG&E has supported me, but I'm not asking them for any money this time. So I'm happy to sign that. And the second one, I haven't heard much about this. I know that Alameda has an agreement with the Port of Oakland regarding the airport, especially regarding noise. I used to live out in that neighborhood right in the flight path. So I would be interested to learn more about it and, hear how it would impact that agreement because, that agreement was, we don't put housing in certain areas and, they limit flights, especially out of the North Field and places like that. So I kind of want to learn more about it, but I can't imagine that it would go over well in folks at Alameda, especially given that we have an agreement to kind of protect our folks from the noise.
Thank you, Jim. Did you basically cover everything? We can give you 30 quick seconds to say anything that you might have forgotten.
Well, thanks again, Sherry. Again, we missed you. We did all this work on tenant protection, and the sad thing was, meeting with folks today, at least a half dozen of them still had issues, right? They were still concerned about their rights were getting violated, their landlords were still treating them poorly. So I think we need to make sure we have a council in Alameda that values protecting our tenants, because otherwise our city staff will take note of that and won't do what they need to do to make sure that people's rights are protected. So I would appreciate your support, and I'm happy to sign this no fossil fuel money, and would be honored to have your support. And it's good to see you, Rigel. I think I saw you. Unopposed, jealous, but good for you.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thanks. I will mute myself and then sign this petition.
Okay. Our next candidate we're going to hear from is Monica Wilson. She is actually she's running for her 4th term as on the Antioch City Council. And it's Chris, can you mute yourself, please? Chris? Pardon me?
Chris Peoples, please mute yourself.
Sounded dramatic.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, Monica is running for District 4. She's been a strong advocate for police reform and for reallocation of public funds toward public safety and mental health. And Monica, we want to hear what you have planned for your next term.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I was out campaigning most of today, so rushed back to make here on time. So again, my name's Monica Wilson. I'm a candidate for Antioch City Council District 4, and I'm here humbly to ask for your endorsement, and thank you for having me. These past 2 years have not been easy. The COVID pandemic, high gas prices, the rolling back of women's rights with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and racial inequality is still here rearing its ugly head. As a council member, I have championed a law that banned oil and gas drilling in our city, fought to shut down a pipeline that transported gas through Antioch, as well as voted down a new gas station that was adjacent to residential property. When the community wanted to see police reform, I stood with them and demanded a citizens police oversight committee, stronger laws against the use of force, and a new city department that was focused on community engagement and public safety that was community facing. I will continue to advocate for those who do not have a voice, those who've experienced trauma or have suffered from mental illness. I will continue to fight for services they truly need and not criminalize them. I'm proud to say a 24-hour mental health response team is coming to fruition soon. And those of you who remember me from my last campaign, that's what I ran on, a 24-hour mental health response team that's not related or connected to our police department. I will fight on the local, state, and federal levels to make sure women have the right to reproductive freedom. Our bodies are choice. What happened with Roe v. Wade is a travesty. In addition to fighting for my seat on council, I'll be fighting for the yes on Prop 1 on the November ballot. Again, my name is Monica Wilson. I'm asking for your endorsement for the Antioch City Council District 4. I'm going to put a comma right there.
Okay, and since Kabir has been having his problem with I'll ask his question. Who are your opponents and what is the campaign like?
So my opponents are Lori Orgachuk, who actually is a current council member, originally in District 3. She was currently with the redistricting. She was drawn into my district. So I'm running against technically an incumbent. I'm running against a woman named Sandra White, who ran against me 2 years ago, unsuccessfully, who ran on really funding more money to our police department. And then a newcomer named Sean Pickett, who is a retired police officer from the city of Richmond.
Thank you, Monica. I see Mark's hand up.
Well, in full disclosure, I've wanted Monica Wilson to run for state senate in our eastern part of Contra Costa, but Antioch, I think it'd be educational for our East Bay friends. Antioch is so unique and in some ways so quirky. Tell us about what issues are very, very unique to Antioch.
Okay, so Antioch, just to give everybody a little bit of background, Antioch at one point, well, a long time ago, used to be a sundown town. And for those of you who don't know what a sundown town is, if you were not white, you could not be outside when the sun went down. Right now, as Antioch is currently the second largest city in Contra Costa and currently one of the most diverse cities in Contra Costa County. So although the majority of our city is now very diverse, we still have some folks still around that don't really appreciate that. Let me just, I'm trying to be really nice about that. So so we're dealing with that pushback from, I don't want to say generations of Antiochans that have been here for a while. So we're dealing with that, but we're also dealing with, we have unhoused that we really, we recently put funding for resources with transitional housing. Mental health was something that really popped up for me that was going on in our city. And it just got to me that why were we criminalizing people that really needed a medical expert to work with them, not our law enforcement. And then finally, particularly not only in Antioch, in particular in East Contra Costa County, we do have high instances of sexual violence and human trafficking. Really trying to be the voice there and making sure that, their voices are heard and they have resources that they need. There's an abundance of more issues that we're dealing with. We also were the first city in the United States to apologize to Chinese Americans many years ago. Long before I got to Antioch, we had a Chinatown that was burnt down, and people ran them out of town. So we went back and said, hey, our city messed up, and we want to apologize. And so now we're building a historical landmark where this section of town used to be. So lots going on. I know I only have a little bit of time, so I can't get into everything. So I'm going to leave it right there.
Thank you, Monica. I've got 2 questions, and you guys have to be kind of real quick because we are running late. Vanessa and then Javanka, and that'll be it for questions. So Vanessa.
Hi, Monica. Same question that I asked the last candidate, which is and thank you for your work in like stepping out and blocking fossil fuel development. And I don't see your name on the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, but I'm hoping you will sign it. And it's in the chat.
All right, I will sign it.
Sweet, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And last question, Javanka.
Hey, Javanka.
Hey, all right. Hey, Monica. Oh my gosh, now it all makes sense. I did not know Antioch was a sundown town. Now it makes sense. The incredible amount of racism that happens in Antioch. Oh my Lord. Anyway, thank you for the fight that you've been doing, despite there's that systemic racism that happens in Antioch. Okay, quick question is, are you trying to sort of run as some type of a slate with anyone in Antioch, Tamisha Torres, for example?
Tamisha and I we're supporting each other, so we're running together. We're trying to find ways of how do we cross support.
Yes.
She has a fundraiser, I go. When I've had a fundraiser, she goes. I just we check in on each other all the time. Just a special note, and this is a big publicity for Tamisha. My mother recently had a stroke right before Christmas, so I've been taking care of her with assistance. And Tamisha is always calling in and checking on me and making sure I'm okay. So a big shout out for her, because I'm like one of her biggest fans, and she's been just wonderful. So I'm hoping she gets the endorsement as well. So please endorse her. I know we're talking about me, but I want to make sure she's endorsed.
That's right. You need an ally, definitely.
Yes.
All right.
Ally.
Well, again, compassionate community is what we're talking about.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Thank you guys so much. And we have a really exciting candidate for this up next. Rigel Robinson is not only, as Jim said, enviably unopposed, but he also has been on is running for the Berkeley City Council for District 7, which encompasses the university, which I think is just so wonderful, because he is, if you don't know, he's very young and very enthusiastic. And it is wonderful to have someone your age actually stepping up to do community service and to work for the community in the way you have. So if some of the people here maybe don't know what you've been doing, so let's hear all of the good things you've been doing, Rigel. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for that grand introduction, Sherry. Good evening. It's good to see you all. I was lucky to meet several of us. I'm glad to see some familiar faces in 2016 during the primary for the presidential election, when I was an undergraduate student at UC Berkeley at the time, having founded the campus chapter of Bernie Sanders campaign, UC Berkeley Students for Bernie. We became the largest and most active campus chapter of the campaign. That was such an incredible and rewarding experience for me. I learned a lot about organizing, how campaigns work, how campaigns win, reaching across the aisle to talk to voters in swing districts who maybe you don't agree on everything on, but you can discover shared ground and shared interests, like pushing back against corporations, even if you belong to different political parties. But perhaps far more importantly, I got to know the progressive community here in the East Bay through that experience. And that was such a rich experience. A couple years later, 2018, Sherry, as you mentioned, I was running as a first-time candidate for the Berkeley City Council. just after graduating from UC Berkeley for a very unique city council district here, District 7, which encompasses the UC Berkeley campus, Telegraph Avenue, and the Southside neighborhood. It has been a long and challenging 4 years since then. You know, no one in office in 2020 planned on governing through a pandemic, but I'm so deeply proud of a lot of what our city has persevered through together, and proud of the progress that we are still making to this day. I would describe to you my principal priorities as building more affordable housing, sheltering the unhoused, and the mobility and transportation work we're doing in Berkeley to design safer streets. I'm glad to see the Honorable Chris Peoples on the line. He knows all about the work we're doing with the Southside Complete Streets project. And I am excited to keep doing that work. Yeah, it's hard when you're my age to plan your life in 4-year increments. I think it's hard for anyone, but I have been so honored by the opportunity to serve this community and to serve this unique district. I was very grateful to have your support as an organization when I ran as a first-time candidate, and very glad to be back before you today. It's good to see you all.
Thank you, Rigel. I don't know, you're unopposed, so Kabir doesn't have a question. Does anybody else have a question?
There is that.
Okay, there's
I
Mark.
believe Joaquin was going to ask a question.
Okay, and okay, let's go with Joaquin first, and then you, Mark. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, Joaquin.
Joaquin, you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, Rigel. I think you answered all our questions down to the T, but the People's Park question looms large in my mind. And you may have remembered that song about they're tearing down paradise to put up a parking lot. So there seems to be many other locations that the UC Berkeley could put up student housing rather than People's Park. And People's Park has been declared, I guess, what do you call it, National Historic Site. And on your website, you say you have been pushing the city to live up to its progressive legacy. So how do you explain that apparently you're against the, or favor the UC Berkeley plan to, you know, take over the People's Park? And then what else was I going to say? Anyway, could you expound on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Joaquin, thank you so much for asking. Really appreciate it. It is absolutely the biggest issue and biggest conversation in the district right now. And I see Kabir was asking the same question in the chat. Thank you, Kabir. Yes, People's Park is a treasured space with a rich history, and it's been a sanctuary for the unhoused for years. And also at the same time, for the last 5 years, I've been pressuring the campus and working to make sure that the project that's built there is the best version of itself that it can be. The city has had two parts to play in this project, principally, and two parts, frankly, that I am deeply proud of. First, helping finance the permanent supportive housing for the homeless that's planned to be built at the site. We allocated unanimously as a council $14 million toward that project, I think at our last meeting of 2021. But more immediately and in the near term, over the course of this year, we have led the work to actually provide housing and shelter to the residents staying at the park. Did a census of the unhoused that have been regulars at the park, identified a number, it was a big number, and worked to make sure that every single one of those individuals had as much help and the resources they needed to get a path to transitional housing, and we hope a path to permanent housing. We're able to house 43 at the Roadway Inn. This is the motel on University Avenue that we're leasing for the purposes of this work for the next 18 months. For a year and a half, we are leasing this hotel and have filled every room there with residents from People's Park. Told since then, so far, 6 individuals that have been helped at that shelter have since received placements for permanent housing. And that's the goal here, of course, to answer the two questions that are most challenging for our homeless neighbors every single day. You know, where am I going to sleep tonight? And what am I going to eat today? And when you meet those basic needs, it becomes so much more possible to start working toward those next steps, to file your paperwork, get your benefits in order, identify the opportunities that you're eligible for, and get on track to being permanently housed. I'm really proud of that work. It's been extremely expensive. It's been interesting being dinged from a few different directions for that. It's a costly project. It's really expensive to put in the investments that are necessary to help people on our streets get landed in permanent housing. But that work is ongoing, and I hope will continue. I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a op-ed that if this project in particular interests you, I really do hope you'll read. It's something I ran in mid to late June, just to expand a little further on some of my own perspectives on the project. It's challenging, and I really appreciate you bringing it up. It's a space with a rich history in the neighborhood, but I believe deeply we can do better than what's been the status quo at the park for years. Thank you, Joaquin and Kabir.
Thank you, Rigel. Mark, did you still have a question?
No, I'll leave it to people who haven't asked questions yet.
Okay.
And I see Vanessa shouting. I double checked on the link just now. I was pretty sure I signed it at some point, and I'm glad it shows up on there. Great.
Okay, we haven't heard from Marisol, so I would like to recognize her and see what her question is for Rigel.
Thank you, Sherry. Hi, how are you? Congratulations, by the way. I was just wondering, so a couple of questions. One is really easy. Is the UC Berkeley group still happening? I'm an alum from Berkeley, so I need to know this.
Fantastic. Not to my knowledge, I don't think so. I know there was a rebrand some years ago to try to keep carrying the work forward under a different moniker. Yeah, good question. It's been a couple of years since I was going to say it's been a couple of years since I was enrolled on campus, but maybe I have some funny news to share with you all. I'm actually back as a part-time grad student on top of my work at council. So that's been a lot, but I'm trying to keep my extracurricular involvement to a minimum.
Right. It's like two parallel lives, right? Your personal and public, right? So the second question is, kind of an extension of talking about homelessness, but also the issue, how it intersects with disability and mental health issues. What are your ideas in terms of how to cope with a situation like that? It's obviously adds a layer of complexity and legal ramifications that we have to take in consideration when dealing with homelessness.
Certainly. It's so challenging and so frustrating. And I think that's one of those areas where I find myself feeling most strongly. It's when I think about that I most want to burn the system down entirely, because we don't have a safety net, and it puts cities in an impossible situation without the resources to get people the help that they need. Individuals living on our streets who need mental health support, going through 5150 cycles or going through the criminal justice system over and over and cycling back out into the streets and unable to actually get treatment for the challenges that they're struggling with. This is not a problem. And also at the same time, I think in a very real way, I found it frustrating that cities don't have more means to build out the infrastructure to address this issue in a holistic and productive way. It really feels like we need a greater system of support to come down either from the state or from a meaningful federal approach to dealing with the mental health crisis on our streets. But that said, I think the most important thing that the cities can do in the absence of a meaningful safety net is try to govern from a place of compassion and recognize that the people who are struggling on our streets, they're not there because they want to be. And so to not approve policies that will unjustly penalize people for trying to make do when they're living on the brink, that should be the rock bottom. Frankly, it was one of the most challenging votes I've had to cast so far on the city council, but also one of the ones I most believed in was my dissent early on in my term when the city was preparing to adopt a RV ban to effectively make it impossible for anyone to live in their vehicle on city streets in Berkeley. I dissented alongside two other council members, but the measure passed. But because of our dissent and because of the backlash that vote got from maybe some of the people on this Zoom, many organizers in the city, and from neighboring jurisdictions, that ban was never actually implemented and still hasn't been to this day, which I'm very grateful for. You know, it's a sort of punitive response to really a public health crisis happening on our streets that you can understand where it comes from. I think sometimes it comes from an understandable place, people's frustration with cleanliness, or feeling that something's happening on their block that they don't feel is safe. But that doesn't bring us closer to equity. That doesn't bring us closer to a solution for the unhoused. So I hope that helps answer your question. I think my real answer to your question is that this is a problem bigger than any city, which is challenging, but the least we can do is not punish people for trying to get by.
Okay, excuse me. We're going to need to move on to the next candidate. We're way past the time with Rigel.
Right.
And there's several hands up, but
it's very good to see you all.
Actually, if you would please put your questions in the chat. I'm sure Rigel and any of the rest of the candidates will be happy to answer them, or go to their, all of them have websites and are available for any of your questions and for a longer conversation about the things that you really care about. I'm sorry, our time is really
all good.
limited
It's
today.
so good to see you all. Unfortunately, I have to hop to something at 6, so this worked out perfectly, but I will drop my campaign email address and website in the chat. And Vanessa, if I can answer really quickly, I don't take PD money, if that helps answer your question. I wouldn't take real estate money either. Frankly, the contribution rules in Berkeley are strict enough anyway. It's actually pretty hard to regardless, but really appreciate your questions. I'll drop my email and website in the chat. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us, Rigel, and for all of the candidates and for everybody that's sticking. This is our last candidate, and as we have mentioned before, I formerly was of Alameda, and now I am actually living in Pinole. And Cameron Sasai, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is a lifelong resident of Pinole, and he is running for the city council. And I'm really anxious to hear about his campaign and to hear how he's going to kind of take our sleepy little village into a kind of more economic and diversified and inclusive community. So Cameron?
Yeah, good afternoon. It's so good to see everyone, and thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. So just a little bit about myself. I'm like you said, proud lifelong resident of Pinole. I grew up walking these streets in Pinole, so I've really seen the way that my city has evolved and changed over my lifetime. I went to community college and Contra Costa College and Diablo Valley College, and eventually transferred to UC Davis, where I did graduate with a degree in political science and an emphasis in public service. But during that time, I've worked numerous jobs, paid my way through college. Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, I've really been deeply involved with different organizations in Pinole, including the Pinole Progressive Alliance. And I work with them to advocate for equitable small business support, law enforcement accountability, and other measures to protect our most vulnerable communities and get us through the pandemic. Through this role in the council, I'm really excited to take the lead in climate action, environmental justice, affordable housing production, and racial and economic justice as well. Now, what really informs my approach to public service is my lived experiences and my personal background. I was raised by a proud immigrant working class mother from the Philippines who moved here at the age of 20, and a Japanese American father who came from a family of who were incarcerated in wartime internment camps and became farm workers in Sacramento County. And so I mention all of this because the struggle and sacrifices of my own family is what brought me here today, and it's because of those experiences that I'm deeply inspired to lead my community and advance the needs of working people in Pinole. But this space is really important because Pinole is ready for change. Status quo leadership is really hurting our marginalized families, and I'm now taking the lead to sort of build a progressive majority in our council, first by winning the seat for our community, and second by also continuing to mentor our youth in Pinole to translate their activism to service local government. This is also a really exciting time for our community as well. It's the first time in our 100+ year history that we can elect a Filipino American to our city council, and only the second time we'll be electing an API, which is a huge deal because we make up over a quarter of Pinole's population. I'm also the only candidate who has made a commitment to refusing contributions from corporations, fossil fuel companies, and police associations, and yet we are the people-powered campaign who is leading the race here in Pinole. So I'm excited to make history with you all and would be humbled to hear your support.
Thank you so much. And Cordell's hand went up right away. We haven't heard from him today. So Cordell?
Yes, can you hear me, Sherry?
I certainly can. Got a little music in the
Yes,
background, but that's fine.
Oh, sorry, I'm at a coffee shop. So, Cameron, the only question I have is, if elected to the city council, how will you support it?
Cordell, we lost you.
Could you repeat that, Cordell?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I said, the question is, if elected to the city council, how will you as staff it?
Couldn't quite hear that, Cordell.
You're kind of breaking up, Cordell.
Cordell, go ahead and write that in the chat if you can.
Yeah.
Write your question in the chat.
And
I can
we'll read it.
answer Kabir's question. Of course, how many seats are available and who are your opponents? There are 3 seats open in this race, and 7 people are running for 3 spots, including myself. So Anthony Tabe is an incumbent who is running for re-election. Norma Martinez-Rubin is also running for re-election. And then we have Rafael Menace, who's my colleague on the Pinole Progressive Alliance, who's also running for a spot, as well as 2 other folks who have been on the council for decades and were termed out but want to come back again and really do lean conservative. And those folks are Debbie Long and Pete Murray.
Okay. Gordon.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I probably should have been asking all the candidates all along. Will you promote, will you support an anti-corruption ordinance? And any corruption ordinance would include a means of crowdfunding candidates in local elections, an independent ethics review board, and will you swear off of questionable campaign finance sources like big oil, police unions, landlords, commercial developers, etc.?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we absolutely need more, tighter laws around finances for campaigns in our city and all across California, I think as well. Part of this campaign is being proud that we're not taking those contributions. We're only taking contributions from people, independent, contributions. And I think that everybody who is running for this seat has to also be held accountable. So I would be proud to champion that sort of review board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. I'm going to punt back to Carol because we have reached our 6 o'clock past time. So Carol.
Okay, hi, Sherry. Something came up you didn't know about. Early in the meeting, we somehow didn't get Reichi Lee.
Oh, okay.
Who's running for school board. So she's going to speak now and Mark will introduce her. Then we're finished with candidates.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
I think she's just been introduced. She's running for our Berkeley School Board, endorsed by Fiona Ma, our friends James Chang, Alfred True, and Rascal Kiang. Reichi, go ahead. Thank you for joining us. Better late than never.
Yes. My apologies, everybody. I am so sorry to keep you waiting, but I am glad I'm here and save the best for last, hopefully. My name is Reichi Lee, and I am running for Berkeley School Board. Why am I running? Yeah. Well, despite the fact that many of us love our public schools, the reality is that we are still a district where our children's outcome is still largely dependent on parent education and disposable income. That's the reality. And I want to change that. In a world-class city like Berkeley, no doubt, it's a world-class city under the shadow of a world-class university. We should be a district where we have enviable academic achievement results. We should be a district where people say, wow, look at Black student success. How amazing is that? How do you guys do it? We should be a district that, for example, have universal and after school, enriching after school care. I've been door knocking for 8 months now. I was the first to file in my race. So I've been talking to, I think, hundreds now of families. Some of them have said, we don't have after school care. We didn't get in. And so it needs to be universal and it needs to be enriching. We should not be a place where 30% of our sixth graders are reading below benchmark and 40% are below math. We should not be a place where 3 out of 4 Black students can't apply to college. 1 out of 2 Latino students can't apply to college. 1 out of 3 white students can't apply to college. This is not acceptable. We also should not be a place where caregivers, this is another thing I've been hearing on the campaign trail, caregivers feel like they have to sue the district in order for their child to get the special services that they need, right? And so you get the picture, especially today, after our children have had so much disruption for the last 2 years. We really need our elected leaders to be unapologetic champions for our students. And I will respond with the speed, the urgency, and the skill that our families and our community deserve. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background. I have been in social justice for many years. I was a former foster youth attorney where I represented and advocated for children, babies that were 1 day old to young people that were 21 years old. And in that work, I saw all the systems that touch them: education, health, government services, social services. And I saw how systems that are well-intentioned can sometimes actually hurt instead. And that experience really, changed my life. I also founded a Mandarin Immersion District School in West Contra Costa Unified School District. It's a district school. We went through the school board process over there to get the school approved by the school board. And I'm so proud of that school. It serves 35% Latino and African-American students. And I think it's something like 92% minority students who are learning Mandarin, a really inaccessible skill, for many families. And their academic outcomes are really good. It's on par with some of the top schools in their district. I am a nationally recognized expert on academic support. I have experience designing programs to help the highest need students. And so I share all of that with you to let you know that I'm not just talking about my values. I have specific direct experience helping other people's children succeed. And that's my life's purpose, and that's what I intend to do. In all of my work, I have experience working with very different stakeholders with very divergent interests. They don't often agree on what the result should be. And I've had to work in that setting for much of my career to find common ground with all those stakeholders. And that common ground is student success. And to keep the adults accountable to student outcomes. One final thing I'll share with you that I think is really cool that I think you would appreciate knowing about is that I am endorsed by Khadijah Brown, who is the president of the Berkeley School Board. And I am also endorsed by the vice president of the Berkeley School Board, Laura Babbitt. For the first time in Berkeley history, we have 2 Black women leading the Berkeley School Board. That's really amazing. And they have thrown their support to me. And if I get elected, I would be the first Asian American woman to serve on the Berkeley School Board. And what does all of that mean? That means when we fight for all, because we understand what invisibility means. Thank you so much.
Reichi, thank you so much for that. I'll ask the first question. One of the things that caught my attention in your agenda and platform is universal after-school care. just go ahead and talk a little bit about that, about what that looks like and how you'll be pushing for that when you are in office.
Yeah. And so I will say, in fairness to the district, one of the reasons that it's not universal right now and some people are on waiting lists is the lack of staffing. That's something that's statewide, nationwide. And so there are a lot of reasons why there is lack of staffing. And I actually kind of anticipated this before COVID hit because I was on my children's school site council. We talked about bumping the salaries for after school care providers and the importance of giving them benefits and giving them raises, and giving them a reason to continue working and return to their jobs. And so one aspect of universal healthcare is to ensure that universal after school care is to ensure that our providers feel appreciated and can live in the community and make a living wage. We also want to ensure part of the universal is also the enriching, because extended learning is it's an amazing place for academic support. It's an amazing place where we bring in all of the enrichment, right, that can't happen during the school day. And so it absolutely is a huge priority of mine because it's an equity issue.
Thank you so much for that. Next question goes to Marisol Rubio. Marisol.
Thank you, Mark. So Reichi?
Yeah, Reichi. It's like Rachel with an I. No
Oh,
problem.
Reichi. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. The last thing I'm going to do is mispronounce it right now. So I just wanted to really ask you, because it's very personal to me. One of the things you mentioned, talking about the special education, the IEPs, and talking about how they're not meeting the needs of students with learning disabilities. And also, I'd like to know what are some of your ideas to rectify that gap in education where they're meeting their needs, in other words. And the other thing is, as you talk about universal after school programs, how does that take into account, how will you be inclusive of students of young people with disabilities? Because my daughter went to school in the neighboring Albany High School. Yeah. And I can tell you she was fully excluded from all after school programs simply because she had a history of seizures and the liability that went with that. So I would love to know a little bit about how you would also incorporate inclusion of students, of young people who have disabilities.
Absolutely. That is a perfect example of inequity right there. And I don't even know if that's allowed, frankly, legally. But let me talk about this. When I was a foster youth attorney, I represented over 200 young people at the same time. At one point, I had 252 cases. And in most of those cases, there was a young person with some special need. It could have been they were overdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, not diagnosed. So it really kind of ran the spectrum. Okay. And then their need can go anywhere from reading delays all the way to nonverbal or autistic. Okay, so I've seen quite a range. And I've been on the campaign trail, like I've said, talking to families. The commonality that I see in both my work as a foster youth attorney, where they needed a legal advocate, the young person needed a legal advocate to advocate for them, and as well as the stories I've been hearing from families, is that families don't have information. They don't have, it's complicated. You have to navigate the California Education Code, right? And there's a whole process as to what your rights are, what you have to do, when you have to do it, when the district has to respond, then what you got to do after that. So you got to know kind of the push and pull points, right? And what your rights are. And so something as simple as, an open house at the beginning of the school year, welcoming families and saying, does your child need an assessment? Do you think your child needs an assessment? Here's what we offer. This is what's entitled to you under the law. I think just providing people the information and making them feel welcome and seen from day one is gonna make a lot of the complaints, go away just by that. Now, in terms of fully integrating our special needs students into all of our programming, including before school care, as well as after school care, is an absolute must. again, that is part of their learning day. Okay. And that's something that I haven't heard is a problem in Berkeley. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's something that I will definitely look into. But you know, it's not acceptable. We had a student who was blind in Berkeley. This is, you can look it up on Berkeley side. It was written up about, and the response was, "Ooh, that's too hard." Well, no, I mean, too hard is not an acceptable excuse under the law. And so we have to figure it out. And you know what? There are resources to figure it out. The district doesn't have to do it by themselves. There actually are quite a lot of resources for the blind, different nonprofits you can partner with, you know, so it's absolutely doable. So if something like that on that scale is doable, everything else needs to be done.
Reichi, thank you for that. Final question goes to Vanessa. Vanessa, go ahead.
Sorry, trying to get myself back together. Hi, Reichi, so good to see you doing this. My question's always about money. Are there groups that you will not take money from? And will you be willing to take the no fossil fuel money pledge? And I ask this of everybody. They say everybody from dog catcher on up to president needs to sign that, because who knows where people running for school board today might go in the future. So are there groups from whom you will not take money?
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I love that you're pushing this, because you get them early, right? And they make a promise, and that's the point. 100%. I mean, I feel like if you don't sign that, you really do not understand, you know, what we're trying to do here as a society. So 100%, I will sign it. I will commit to it. I heard Rigel actually talk about how Berkeley has already really kind of strict rules in place about who you can take money from. Even without it, I would not take money from corporations or business entities, as well as unions. And Berkeley actually has a prohibition for taking money from, first of all, the individual contribution limit in Berkeley is $250, but they have a complete prohibition from taking money from unions and business entities. Yeah.
Reichi, I'm going to ask you a controversial question that I was asked to ask you. And apparently your treasurer is considered controversial by some in Berkeley as a lawyer who represents big developers and landlords. Anything?
Any comments about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Jack and I, you know, go back as friends. And so, you know, he's a family friend, and, you know, I needed somebody to, you know, kind of help me out with the paperwork. So we're, you know, kind of learning the campaign financing rules together. You know, I respect Jack. He's a great lawyer. He's a great father. He's a great person. And his professional decisions and his professional choices are not mine. Yeah. And
okay.
So, yeah. And that's not the work that I ever done or will do.
All right. Thank you for that. Barisha, I can never say no to. She has her hand up. So of course, I will give her the last question. Barisha, go ahead.
Thank you. I am a alumna of the great Berkeley High. And I have a question. Back in the day when I was there, they talked a lot about tracking, basically putting minority kids automatically into non-college prep classes, lower division classes, without testing them. A discriminatory practice. And from when I hear the conversation about Berkeley Unified School District, I'm hearing that it's even more kind of like discriminatory overall. I guess that was what I was hearing. So I want to find out how you guys are going to tackle that particular issue of the tracking. Similar to maybe other things like special ed, IEPs, that takes testing, but there could be some very smart people out there that need to actually be in those upper level classes that are not getting there. And so when it goes the opposite way like that, what is the process and what are the policies that you're going to implement?
Thank you for that. Absolutely. That's what I've heard too on the campaign trail. that this kind of informal tracking where it's really a school of two schools, a school for two very different student sets, one that's going to be fine or going to graduate and, you know, have good outcomes, and another one that's not. And that's still the case, and that is not okay. Much of it, I believe, happens before you get to high school, because the studies show that if you are below math, you know, and reading by a certain grade level, around third grade, that is outcome determinative. And so that tells us that needs to be addressed, aggressively addressed and fixed well before the students ever even step into high school. All right. And so the positive side of it is that there are some, I think, innovative programs, resolutions and programs that have been approved by the current board. One of them that I was part of in the community workshops around, which is called African American Success Framework. It is really cool, really detailed, multi-pronged approach with different ways to measure success. That's been approved, but what I will do when I come on the board is to ensure that that's properly funded and implemented, right? Because it's one thing to have a nice resolution, but it's a whole different thing to actually implement it. And also we need bold leaders who are not afraid to ask hard questions around accountability. Accountability is that A word that makes people uncomfortable, right? Because the adults have to do the work, right? And they have to explain whether something is working or not. And so I do intend to ensure that there's accountability around those programs, because if they're not working, we need to know why, and we need to perhaps move on to something else. I also want to say, based on my experience, you have programs that are meant to support students, but we also want to think about equity in terms of outstanding opportunity. That is a way, that's excellence as well, okay? What does that mean? Is that we need to provide our students amazing opportunities. Like I mentioned, for example, Mandarin. It doesn't have to be Mandarin. It could be something else. It could be coding. It could be, you know, something else. But when young people start to see themselves in these different experiences and they build the confidence that yes, they can, yes, they can defy limits. Yes, they can. Yes, they're smart. Yes, they have other skills that are valued. Then that will create a ripple effect. All right. So I feel like as on the school board, I'm not hearing other, you know, candidates talk about the types of opportunities that we can leverage in Berkeley. I've already started talking to UC Berkeley's computer science, electrical engineering department, building relationships with them. Right? They do some amazing programs, coding and math programs abroad. Why can't they do them here? Right? And so we need to really leverage our community resources. So yes, on the equity programs, the support programs, but yes, also to the outstanding opportunities. And we need to address the achievement gap way earlier and starting in elementary school.
Reichi Lee, running for Berkeley School Board. Thank you so much for making the time this evening. Back to you, Carol.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Okay, we did it. I can't believe it. I don't know what happened, but the first 2/3 of the meeting, we were right on time, and then it fell apart in a sense. And now it's 6:30, and ballots will be sent out very soon. Anyway, just thanks to everybody for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you, gang.
Kabir has a question about the process. Did you want to answer that, since I know we can't hear him?
I have a question about the endorsement process. Kabir, yeah, go ahead. What is it?
You all hear me?
No.
That's bad. It's not good.
Can you type it in the chat?
Yeah, so I'm confused about the Berkeley. No.
You're confused about what?
Berkeley. What?
Can you hear me
Yes.
better now?
Yes.
Hit it.
No.
Hit it.
The Berkeley School Board race. So there's three seats available, and there's 3 candidates seeking our endorsement. But there's
but there's another candidate using. Does anyone get what I'm saying?
I think there's an incumbent.
Yeah, so we didn't know about that incumbent. And we found out after we closed taking applications. It was just too much. We've gone through over 40, close to 50 people turning in applications in the past few months. And we had a cutoff and we didn't know about the other person. People are welcome to, in the actual election, to vote whoever they want to. We can't offer endorsements to everyone. We had to turn some people away
But
for.
my concern is if we endorse all three of
We can endorse all three because there's 3 seats.
my concern is if we endorse
I can't hear you. You're fading
all
out
three
again.
of those candidates, and we'll be saying don't vote for that incumbent.
Well,
You're saying don't vote
you're
for
an
the
incumbent,
incumbent.
you don't come
Saying
to
we're
our
not voting for the
Revolution
incumbent,
Day.
not to support the incumbent, right?
Can I say something?
Go for it.
So we put out this solicitation for endorsement out in the social media. It's not our job to seek out who is running. It's the candidate's job to seek endorsement. Kabir, is that clear?
You know, there were people that asked us months ago if we would endorse them, even though we weren't even starting to do it, you know, so if, you know, when you decide you're going to run for something, I think you'd think about that kind of thing and take action on it. You know, we can't go out and get everybody, you know, there are people that ask us too late and we feel bad, but we have to draw a line somewhere. Otherwise, we would have been working till 4 this morning. And
Hey,
none
Carol,
of
I'm
us
gonna
do
Carol, I'm
that.
gonna say something very vainglorious. Over 80% of our endorsed candidates win. Any incumbent not coming to our revolutionary space, shame on them. Shame on them.
Yeah, yeah, we got a good batting rate.
Yes.
And we very carefully read what everybody writes. And, you know, a group of us, we screen them very carefully. We really, really, really want the best progressives to not only get our endorsement, but to get elected. That's how we make the change that we need in this country.
All right, gang. I love you all. Carol.
Okay, good
thank
night,
you for-
everybody.
Mary, Carol, everyone, you're so great. Michael, thank you. See you again.
Vanessa, the email is on the way.
Thank you, Gordon.
See you all Friday. Friday, we're going to get together in person and
Okay.
have a great time.
Friday.
Friday is for, some of us are getting together for the fundraiser for Shannon in Berkeley. So look at our website, at our Facebook page. There's an event there and it's at Vic's Shot.
What time?
5:30 to 7:30.
Okay, I might be able to come on the late side. I've got a tabling thing I have to do until 6.
Okay, we're just hoping, part of it is to support one of our candidates that's been endorsed. The other part is to just see some of you guys in person, because we
Right.
miss you all.
Right? Sherry, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Since we're here. It's about the Solano stroll. Do you know anything about that?
You know, Carol is probably better about that than